Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Virtual SFGE 2020. We are so excited you've taken some time out this weekend to join us on our virtual journey through a variety of different gaming medias. We're going to try to put together something that you would totally enjoy, totally look back on and say, hey, at least I got to have something that I missed for the summer. Maybe it'll bring you a little bit of enjoyment and a couple of smiles. Let me introduce my co-runners, Mr. Preston Burt and
Hey,
Mr.
how's it
Patrick
going?
Wall.
Hello, everyone.
Thanks for joining me tonight via this call so we can share a little flashback on SFGE. So it's been a while, guys. It's been a long while.
But it's gone fast.
It's been a journey. I will say for me, it's been a very interesting journey of how SFGE went from this convention that was in our heads to what we had just last year. And the numbers prove it, right?
Do you guys remember how this first got started? The very first time this was talked about?
I think we all probably have slightly different memories about this. So refresh us with your recollection, Patrick.
I remember local collectors and all around amazing people, Dana and Joel Reeves, who we ran in the pinball and arcade circles with here in Atlanta, contacting all of us and plus one other person and saying, we think we should do a gaming show, a pinball and gaming show. And we want you guys to be involved. Let's talk about it. That's what I remember.
And I remember that we were very glad that they said something and approached us because we independently had our own kind of thoughts about this and desires and wanted to see something put forth in the Atlanta community, and to have someone come forth with like-mindedness was very, very welcomed. You know, it was because of our connections through the Atlanta Pinball League, actually, that we got to really even meet Dana and Joel and get to know them real well and feel comfortable with them. And that's what I think is great about this show, is that it really birthed from a community spirit of friends who had a similar goal. Now, I'll admit, my goal was a little selfish because I was just basically jealous that all these other awesome cities had pinball and arcade shows, and Atlanta, being as big as it was, didn't have anything.
Yeah, we had to drive 7 hours to get to the closest one.
Right.
Preston, you and I actually flew and went to a couple, and I believe on those trips we said, wouldn't it be awesome to have this? We should totally do this, and then we sat back and did nothing. Until we had that call from Dana and Joel.
Yeah, and like I said, wanting to do it selfishly so I could enjoy it. I don't know that my vision of how it would work out for me came to fruition, but I'm still glad it exists in the way it does, and that I'm a part of it.
Yeah, but did you think way back then that you would actually get to play games at your own show?
Delusionally, yes, I did.
Exactly. I think I get in about 2 games a year, and they're about 3 minutes each is all I get to play.
Yep.
Yeah.
So one of the things that we decided upon first, the 5 of us at that time, organizers, was it's going to be expensive to have this. In fact, other people in the community had said, oh yeah, if you got a lot of money to waste, go ahead and start your own show. I remember that comment being made. But crowdsourcing was coming of age, and we decided to try and do a Kickstarter with right now it seems small, but at the time it seemed huge, goal of $4,000, or is it 5?
4 or 5, yeah,
I
believe, yeah.
And we were lucky in the fact that that Joel was an experienced cameraman, filmmaker, and had connections with some graphics people that could help make it look really, really slick. And then Patrick and I at the time were running a podcast called The Game Room Junkies. And so we had kind of a distribution outlet to be able to get the word out to people who are already big fans of arcade and pinball. And I say arcade and pinball because at this time, that was kind of our focus. As you know, if you've been to our show, we have since expanded quite considerably to all aspects of gaming, but at first we were definitely more of a focus on pinball, arcade, with a little console gaming on the side.
Yeah. I would say my biggest memory of that Kickstarter was the video. We spent some funny hours, and if you want a good laugh, you should go out and find the Kickstarter
So
and watch
embarrassing.
it to this day.
Well, not only the Kickstarter video itself, but somewhere exists some bloopers.
Oh
from
yeah,
that.
they're out there. They're out
Yeah.
there.
It's cringeworthy.
Yes, it is.
It's cringe, but it's glorious at the same time.
But it was a major success. It really, it went beyond all of our expectations. I think we raised a little over between $6,000 and $7,000 in that Kickstarter.
Yeah, something like that.
It was
You know,
awesome.
the one thing I remember from that was the decision on the name.
Yeah.
That was a debate for a little while of the name, and to this day, I still get people that look at me and go, "Southern Fried." And of course, there's that story goes on still today. I think we're all very proud of what the name ended up being. I think it's very memorable. Obviously, the SFGE sticks. I will say a funny story. Yeah, everyone knows that the show is now Southern Fried Gaming Expo, and we did that because everybody called it that, right? Everyone kept calling it the Gaming Expo, the Gaming Expo. And so we did it. And of course, the next 4 emails I get actually spelled out Game Room Expo. I'm like, really? But I couldn't be more happy with the name we chose. And I don't mind changing it to gaming because I think it does fit what we are now even better. So, yep.
So that first year was really integral because it kind of established us as a legitimate show. I think there were a lot of people that thought it would be kind of just a bigger version of what the Atlanta Pin Swap was, which is an event that we had all attended, and I'd even run a Southern Fried pinball tournament with our friend Paul Kiefert to kind of get that awareness out there. And so that was a fun event, and it brought the community together. But we wanted it to be like a real legitimate convention, an expo. And the three of us, we are longtime attendees of other great shows in the Atlanta area, such as Dragon Con and others. And we really wanted to put on a really professional feeling show with a lot to do that would be engaging across an entire weekend. And when people came there, I think they were expecting something different, but we're really, really, really pleased with what the first year looked like.
So the Century Center. Do you remember the biggest problem with our first year hotel? What killed us with every hotel we looked at and every location we looked at?
No, what?
Power.
Oh, right.
Power. And it still to this day drives our show, right? You've got to have, somehow 500, 350 arcade pinball machines or whatever the number was last year needs a lot of power. And so that was one of the few hotels that could actually give us the power requirements we were asking for. And so we kind of were limited on where we could have the show. And I think we made a good choice. We outgrew it, but we made a good choice.
Yeah, if anybody wants to geek out with power requirements, what we have to do in our heads with math is for every arcade game, it's 1.5 to 3 amps, and then 3 to 5 amps per pinball machine. So last year we had over 350 arcade and pinball machines. So if you want to do that math in your head, that's how much power we need to account for. So it wasn't that the first year, but still what we were shooting for, it was hard to find.
135 is the amount of arcades and pins our first year, Preston. 135. It looked like a million in that room, I'm telling you.
It did.
And a lot of those were our own personal machines.
That's right.
Yeah.
Dana and Joel did their whole house.
Yeah.
I think they brought like 25 themselves.
Yeah,
but the great thing about that is, even though we did bring a whole lot, the community really did come out and support us in a big way, and they continue to do so. Although it does feel a little like pulling teeth sometimes to get some folks to bring games that we know have some really, really nice ones, but we wouldn't be able to do the show at all without the community support.
Never.
And that's kind of what makes our show different than everybody else. Because like, even if we had, a bunch of resources at our disposal, to be able to bring all the games that we have would require so much more than we could ever imagine.
Yeah, they should see that what comes in the truck from us already, and then to add games to that. No, it's
Yeah.
it's definitely. I think the word we've used a lot is we don't just have fans and we don't have members. We call it a family. I mean, it really is. Everybody brings out the stuff they love to the show, and it's special. My memory from that first year is I was working registration, and about an hour hour and a half before we were supposed to open. They're like, Shannon, there's a line forming. We probably should open a little early and get this line moving. And I was like, oh, there's probably not
Line
that
for
long.
what?
Well, yeah, line. How long? What do you mean line? And if you remember the Marriott, it's one big long hall heading all the way back to the convention space. And I looked down the hall, and it was going as far as I could see down the hall. And that's not something you expect your first year. I mean, it just kind of threw me for a loop at all these people there anxious to play the video games. It was kind of exciting.
Yeah. That first year, I remember one of the standout memories for me was the fact that it wasn't just a show where you would just come and play games. Obviously, if that's all you wanted to do, you could do that, but we added some things to the mix. And I think what really set us apart was just like the flair for showmanship. And that first year, if you remember, it was because we had Star Wars cosplayers come out, and we had a tournament on the arcade and the pinball machine combined. And there are pictures out there of Darth Vader and stormtroopers. We blared the Star Wars music into the ballroom. And I kind of missed that a little bit. Obviously, we can't have that small of a space, but it was really cool to be able to blare something in the game room, have it be easily heard, and then, just burst in with all these costume characters and make a real big scene and cause a commotion.
It was great.
It was a special moment. I agree. I'll never forget that. It put a chill down my back hearing that Star Wars music and having those cosplayers escort the games in the room. And what got me was all the people who they stopped playing their games and gravitated towards the stage where that was all going on.
Yeah.
And it was great.
And we did that again next year. So moving into our second year, and you guys stop me if you want to tell some more first year stories, but the second year we did kind of the same thing, but that was with Walking Dead was the big release at the time. And so we had a whole bunch of zombies come out. And
then another day that second year, we had a bunch of people dressed up as knights.
Mm-hmm.
And we were doing, was it a Medieval Madness?
Medieval Madness tournament.
But a kids tournament. Yeah. And so we had a bunch of people come out for that. I think I was real quick on the first year. I think the person that threw me off the first year was Jerry Buckner. I was very surprised and excited to have Jerry Buckner at the show, which is an Atlanta native, which I didn't know until then. And Pac-Man Fever was just one of those songs from the 80s that stuck in my head and never went away, right?
I remember thinking of Jerry as a guest.
Yeah, you did.
Because we were trying to think of who's local. Is there anybody in the gaming industry or the gaming past in Atlanta? And I remember going to, it was called Discover Mills at the time. It's Sugarloaf Mills now. And they have it's a big mall, and they have different sections of the mall themed in different ways. And a memory popped in my head about a display in the Georgia music section.
Oh, that's
right. And there was a Pac-Man Fever record there. And I was like, something Pac-Man Fever. And so I started looking around, and I found Jerry. And the minute I found Jerry on Facebook, I was so excited to message him, and he called me the same day. It was great.
And he's been a great guest because he's supported us he was at the prom last year. So yeah. Right.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. That year, I'm still on guests. First year show, you're having to do some serious convincing to get guests to come. Because they don't know if you're legit or not. And we really, I think, lucked out. We had Billy and Walter that year, Billy Mitchell and Walter Day. So that was really cool, and that was a great connection to make. And you guys know that Billy is if you guys don't know it, I'll tell you, he is one of the best guests that we've ever had, just because he interacts with the attendees so much. He really worked hard all weekend.
He wants you to put him to work.
Yes, he does. He's an awesome guest. But we also had a very famous pinball designer named Barry Ausler, who was known to be a little bit quiet in the community of pinball designers. And we reached out to him and were able to convince him to come to our show. And he was quiet, but he was an amazing guest. I'll never forget, one of his games was set up out in the lobby area outside the game room. Preston, maybe you remember what it was.
It was a space shuttle, and it was Micah and Joe's space shuttle.
Yeah, and there he was in front of the owners of that game, playing their game you know, to walk by and see Barry Ausler playing the game that he designed right there at our show, to me, that was really special at that first year. That was cool.
Yeah, was super cool.
And then the next year, speaking of guests, we had Brian Colin come out, and he's the designer of Rampage and Arch Rivals, a bunch of other great games, had a big history with Bally Williams. And I don't know if it was his first show. I don't know.
I think it was,
But
or early. Yeah.
It was a very early experience. He does a bunch of shows now, but it was great to get him, to see him be recognized for his work and be appreciated. And I think he was just in awe of the fan reception and how thrilled people were to meet him. And I was really happy to.
He did the right thing. You know, he brought all this art that he does, you know, and I wasn't expecting that. I don't know if y'all were expecting that. And he had all these things with him to sell and show, and it was really cool. And I know, Preston, you and I have seen him at other conventions, and we were hoping to have him back this year for 2020. It didn't work out, but maybe next year. But he's a great guest as well. Yeah.
Yeah. So we were at the Century Center for 2 years. And then after 2 years, a short 2 years, we were already busting at the seams and had to start looking for another place.
I remember that second year. The people, it was elbow to elbow. It was really hard to maneuver in our space, and we'd already, and I know, like, tabletop had been on our discussion since the beginning, even though we knew we couldn't have it in that space. And the more we talked about it and the more we thought about it, we knew that the Marriott Century Center would not be a long-term facility. I think the funny part of this story is we started investigating options. Everybody wanted to put us at the airport. Remember that? Everybody. No, that was our answer. But we had actually had visited the Renaissance Waverly, I think our first year. And I think, going back to what Preston said, we were unknown. No one knew who we were. No one understood the show. And I think after we had 2 years under our belt at the Century Center, the word got out. You know, I was told our second year, the bar served more on our weekend at Marriott than they'd ever served. Now, that may say we bring a lot of alcoholics to the show, or it may say something else. I'm not sure. But it says we definitely bring some attendance, you know. And so I think that helped us really be able to move into the Waverly, which to us was a big upgrade, don't you think?
Oh, huge.
Scary.
Yeah, it was frightening. To take the, you know, even though we were tight at the Century Center, to take a leap to the size venue that the Waverly is, with the amount of room requirements that comes with, and fees and so forth, it was still a leap of faith, I'd say, in our show, to think, you know, we do have something special. I really think the attendees will come, and I think we can continue to grow. So it's kind of like putting in all your chips and saying, I'm betting on us. I'm betting on the show. I'm betting on the community.
And we've done that a few times, but that definitely was a big one.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, but we added a lot of great content to fill out the show.
Oh yeah. So,
and Shannon, you mentioned it already, and that was
tabletop
gaming.
That was my love, right? I've always loved arcade and pinball, and now I've got Patrick on the tabletop boat now. But I've always loved arcade and pinball, no question. But I was wanting to see that tabletop side of things, and I think that we were lucky to be able to bring that into the show at the right time when tabletop was really on a big upswing. I think that our first year guest was amazing. I don't know whose idea or how we got it, but if you don't know John Carbolic, he is an artist, and he has done art for many different things. Most notably, what's his card game, Preston? The one he did the art for? Munchkin. Thank you. So we were able to get John to come down, and he brought his wife and his daughter, which was a young aspiring artist herself. And so I've got a funny story about John. John was actually fascinated with some of the arcade machines. He would do stuff and greet people and do his panels and drift off into the arcade for a little while. and fell in love with an arcade machine, and I don't remember which one. Preston,
It
do you
was
remember?
Defender.
Defender. And so someone said, Shannon, you got to check out this tweet. And it was him and Will Wheaton tweeting out and back about should he buy this. Will Wheaton, the actor from Star Trek, etc., asking if he should buy this arcade machine. And the answer was yes, buy this arcade machine and have it shipped. And I was like, oh my gosh, they're talking about our show in this Twitter feed, and he's buying this arcade machine. And sure enough, he did and made it back home and was totally ecstatic to have this machine in his home. And I was like, oh, that came from SFGE. It was so cool. And his daughter was doing
it really
art.
did come from SFGE because I don't remember who it was, but he actually befriended 2 attendees who actually made the trip to deliver it to him in person.
Oh, I actually
that's what I remember.
Ship. Okay, cool. That's even cooler. That's great. Great guest. And you're right, Patrick. That I know we added other stuff there. I'm sure we'll talk about it, but tabletop for me was the big one for sure. Yeah.
Yep.
Well, it kind of goes along with our eventual name change, which is, when you think of game room, we in our mind were thinking along Patrick and myself, our Game Room Junkies podcast, and we have arcade and pinball machines there. But we wanted this convention to be a celebration of gaming in general. So that includes console gaming, and that includes tabletop gaming. So it's just a natural evolution, I think, of the love of competition, to gather together with friends, experience that community, experience something tactile and real world, and tabletop definitely did that.
Absolutely. And the other thing is it fit in with one of the principles that we, from the very beginning, designed the show around, which is the recognition that we want people to come for the weekend, and the admission that people just can't stand up and play arcade games and pinball machines for 12 hours a day for 3 straight days.
Yeah.
You just can't do it. We want to provide other things for people to do while they're at the show.
Oh, and you know what that reminds me of? It's all the emails, and we used to do a post-con survey of people saying, I came for the arcades, and we got totally sucked into 6 hours of board games on Saturday, and I absolutely loved it.
Mm-hmm.
And it was those arcade people that said that blew my mind. I expected tabletop people to show up, but seeing other people enjoy that as well was pretty fascinating. So
similarly, if you don't want to be able to spend all your days standing up playing arcade and pinball, we had the Southern Fried Film Fest. You could pop in and watch a movie and see some great filmmakers. You could listen into a bunch of different lectures or interviews with our celebrity guests. You could play Artemis, which is another fun cooperative game.
So fun.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, a whole lot to do that was able to be because we were able to expand to include more gaming stuff.
But Preston, you said tactile.
Uh-huh.
And to me that says physical combat, which is the one thing people ask us all the time is, why do you have this at your show? And I want you to tell us why.
Why do we have it at our show?
I love it. Don't get me wrong. Totally love it.
Why not?
Yeah, I love it.
So if you don't know what we're talking about, Shannon is alluding to the fact that at Southern Fried Gaming Expo, not only can you play games, but you can also watch grown men and women pummel each other to the mat with some live wrestling. Well, I think it's a part of an Atlanta, a Southern tradition of live entertainment. And, this is Ted Turner's WCW and all that stuff filmed here. And we were just honestly approached by some people who loved games and also ran a wrestling show and said, you know what, I think it'll be a good fit. And I said, I think you might be right.
Yeah. Plus, the 3 of us attend Dragon Con every year, and Dragon Con on one of the nights has a fabulous wrestling show that lasts 2.5 to 3 hours, and we go to that every year and have a fabulous time. So when this opportunity came
if you're listening to this and you happen to go to Dragon Con, look for us. We're in the purple shirts over on the side, acting crazy. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. That's us.
So one of my favorite stories from the whole wrestling bit was wrestling was going on as the guys mentioned. There were lots of questions about it, but that year, Charlie Emery from Spooky Pinball was one of our guests. He came with his family. It was awesome to have him. But he wandered over into the ballroom that was having wrestling. And he was standing there in the back of the room, his mouth hanging open. And I walked up to him, I stood to him, and I said, "Well, Charlie, what do you think?" And he shook his head really slow. And he said, "It's the goddamn best thing I've ever seen at a pinball show ever."
That sounds like Charlie. Well, I don't know if it's the best thing that a lot of people have seen, but I do know a lot of people enjoy it. And every year that we've had it, we've had to expand it to a larger room. And every year, since after the first year, it's filled up and generates a line, and people look forward to it. We added a second night of wrestling, so instead of just the one night on the first year, we've had it be a Friday and Saturday thing. And it's just something different. It's something crazy. And how often do most people get to see live wrestling? Not pretty often.
No.
So it's just a nice change of pace.
Yeah, not that close either.
And then this year was the first year that we actually had a true celebrity guest in Mr. Lance Guest of the last Starfighter fame.
Yep. That was a movie that we loved growing up, and we said, "Hey, let's just see. Maybe we can get him." And he was able to come, and we actually had a Starfighter machine that year too.
Yes. That is, again, one of my favorite. That's another one of my favorite memories from that year was I was sort of managing Mr. Guest, Lance Guest, and his signing table. But there was this gentleman who brought this Starfighter replica who had clearly spent a lot of effort and a lot of time on this. Clearly was a fan of the movie, maybe the #1 fan, and brought the game from, I don't remember where he was from. He wasn't local. And he brought it there. And so I asked Lance if he would mind going in there and talking to the guy and playing the guy's game. And Lance was like, "Sure, let's do it." And so I escorted him in the room, and this guy watched Lance Guest play his game that he had put so much effort into. And I think everybody who was watching it was tearing up at this. It was such a cool moment for him, and to see him and his reaction was really amazing.
Lance was a really special guest. He had no air about him. He was just very casual and nice and fit in wonderful with the group. It was a nice weekend with him.
Yeah, cool guy.
Yeah, definitely.
And before I mention one other thing, I did want to go back and give a plug for Atlanta Wrestling Entertainment. I realized I didn't actually say the name of the fine folks that provide that entertainment. So shout out to Josh Wheeler and all the folks at Atlanta Wrestling Entertainment. You should go check them out when you can. Outfit. Again, they're great.
Yep.
So this was also the first year we started a silent auction. So with the numbers going up at the show, we thought it would be really neat to give back to the community in some way. And so we made a decision to have a silent auction, and I was amazed at how well the community pulled together and had tons of stuff at the auction, with our donations that year going to the Atlanta Community Food Bank, which I thought was a great charity at the time, still do. And we did them for the first 2 years of the auction. And it was great to be in Atlanta and supporting an Atlanta group that we'd heard great things about. And I think they were very appreciative of that. And so the auction continues to this day. So, but we'll talk about that soon in another year, right?
Yep. So moving on, we can't highlight every single thing awesome that happens each year, but thinking about the next year, we expanded and we're able to have a big premiere, almost a coming out party, so to speak, for a really, really cool project that a lot of enthusiasts and collectors were looking forward to, which is the Sky Skipper reveal. Alex and Whitney put together basically a lost Nintendo game and got all the original specs and all the original boards, and got Rich from This Old Game to reproduce the artwork, and got Nintendo's help. And we were the first show to be able to have Sky Skipper for people to play for the first time, maybe ever.
Do you remember it being in, so our show, we have an office that's our stuff and it's all the extra boxes, but do you remember it being hidden in the back of the office for the first day, still wrapped, so not even we could see prior to the reveal, right?
Yeah,
It
Very
was like a
hush
state
hush.
secret.
Yes, it was great. I loved it. You know, that was this year. We've had music at our show every single year, whether that be entertainment played at a DJ level, or we love live bands and live performances. I really do think that this year was the one that I remembered first off. Even though we've had it before, this year we had a couple of really great guests. We had Smoochy Face and we had Professor Shy Guy, but the two guys that blew me away that year was the Guitar Bros. The Guitar Bros, where they played guitar and they would do arcade pieces on the guitar. And if you've not watched any of their YouTube videos, please go do it. They not only did they perform a set during the show, they also played for our VIP event and literally acoustically blew me away. I was amazed at their talent. And so definitely the first year that music and entertainment past that gaming point really stuck out in my head. You know, with this bigger venue, we could have those kind of things and give people an option to chill at night as opposed to just, you know, nothing. So.
Yeah. Another guest that we had that year that I was super excited about, because I'm a huge Atari fan, especially for, I mean, I'm a sucker for anything classic Atari. And we were able to convince Mr. David Crane, a former Atari developer and co-founder of Activision, to come out and join us. And it was it was great to hear his stories of you know, the golden age of console games that year. He was a great guest.
Another great guest that year was Roger Sharpe. Preston mentioned a picture of him gosh, what's his name? Barry Alstor. That was Preston or Patrick that said that about Barry Alstor playing someone's game. But I've got a picture of Roger Sharpe and his wife, and he's playing a game, and it's the most genuine picture of him being at the show amongst the crowd playing a pinball machine. And so if you see that in our library, it's a great pick, and it's one that sticks out in my head every time I look at the pictures from 2017. I do have one cool story from 2017. I found out about this after the event, and it just tears me up, but it's such a great point. I think it'd be neat to hear. One of our volunteers, one of our troopers that was working the door to the game room, saw me a week or two after the event, and she goes, "Shannon, did I tell you what was going on at the show?" And I said, "No." And she said, I saw her sitting at the door with this senior lady, and they were chatting and having a good time, and she was doing her job. And she said, "Did you meet her husband?" And I said, "No." And she said, "Well, I did, and he was the sweetest man." She said that they came in and they didn't know where to go or what to do, but they'd heard that there were older pinball machines at this thing. And he was a fan of pinball machines. He'd had a couple that kind of didn't work anymore, and he couldn't keep up with them, but he just wanted to go play some of these machines. And I said, "Oh, that's really sweet." And so, but what I found out was he actually had been diagnosed with something that was very debilitating to him, and he knew he wasn't going to be able to do this very much longer. And so he'd ask his wife if he could come to the show just to see all these machines. And of course, she was all about it. And so she told me that she sat out there for like an hour and a half, and every 5 minutes he would come back out and check on her and tell her all the games he'd played for the last 5 minutes and everyone he'd seen that he hadn't seen in 30 and 40 years, and how amazing it was to get to play and see these games again, all lit up and in their glory. And for some reason, she told me this story and I just teared up, because for me, you know, it's about putting these games out for not only for, I guess, you know, I've always thought about a younger generation because I see the eyes of a 5-year-old light up when they play a pinball machine for the first time. But it's about people that have gotten to play these games their entire life and how special these games are to them. I think we all have a machine. I have one sitting behind me that's the machine I had in college, and it was memorable to me. And I think if you've ever played pins or even arcades, you have those games that are, so that story to me was just powerful. So.
Yeah, that's very cool.
Yeah, I can't tell you how many times we walk by And not only are people reliving memories that they had such fondness of playing these games back in the day, but I love the fact that this convention makes new memories for people. And I can't tell you how many kids I see playing a pinball machine for the first time. You have to show them to use both buttons or where the buttons are, and not to use both flippers at the same time.
And they're trying to push the plunger.
Yeah. And I think kids are honestly responsible for the most people putting 4 players on a pinball machine because they just hit that start button over and over again. It's all about making new memories and having good fun.
Yeah.
Speaking of new memories, that year we were able to, in 2017, moving on. The next year was a year we were able to make some memories that I was very proud to be a part of. And that was, again, testing the waters with something completely different. So we already had a good history with wrestling. And this year I tried the Hotlanta Extreme Eating Contest. And we had a live hot pepper eating challenge. And again, why is this at a gaming expo? Well, I mean, loosely it's competitive. It's like a game. It's a contest. But mostly it was just something fun and stupid to do that would kill some time and just be, something neat and exciting.
So your answer was, why not? In our early discussions of this in the car on the way to work, it was originally not going to be peppers. It was originally going to be,
I don't remember.
Oh, we were talking wings. We were going to go wings.
Oh,
remember?
right. Yeah, because I'm a fan of that show.
You are, yeah.
Oh gosh, what is it?
Where they
Hot
talk
Ones.
Hot
Yeah.
Ones. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we talked wings for a while, and I'm actually glad it didn't work out that way. But the logistics of getting the wings with the different sauces and whatnot was not such a hot idea. So we went with peppers, and it ended up working out okay. Billy was at the show that year, and Billy, if you didn't know, Billy Mitchell runs a
hot
sauce company. And so the final challenge was chugging this bottle of hot sauce that he brought. And I didn't know if the contestants would survive. They did sign disclaimers, but we did make it through, right?
Well, the chugging of the hot sauce was only out of necessity. That was the tiebreaker.
Yeah,
that's right.
I didn't know that it would get to a tiebreaker, but that's what we decided that would be the tiebreaker. Whoever.
Yes.
So let me just add my perspective here. I'm usually, for everyone's knowledge, I'm usually the last one to be buying off on these crazy ideas that come out from these two guys. And this wasn't any different. I was like, okay, whatever you want, and I really had nothing to do with planning this. In fact, I was able to sit in the audience and observe this when it came on. And it was glorious. And I think that's the last time I doubted these two guys and their ideas, because this was a no-brainer. It was so much fun being in the audience.
So that's funny, because that's probably the only time in many of years we've all been at the same room with something, because I was actually running sound for that one.
Yep.
And Preston was the MC with Billy, and you were in the crowd. That's too funny. I didn't even know that.
I was with my family in the crowd.
In a packed room.
Packed. Yeah, standing room only.
Yes.
Yep. I think everybody was hoping for a meltdown, and they got it in some regards, but it's a novelty act and it's fun. If you haven't gone and you're going to get to go to the show next year, definitely check it out.
Yes.
Yeah. So let's see, my memory from 2018 I thought was really neat was actually Preston's arcade machine. Preston brought a redone Zor, which I'd never heard of.
That one's a high point for you?
No, I thought it was really cool. But how many high scores are out there on record for it? Like,
well,
2?
I don't know now,
but then.
Yeah, then the whole thing was, this is such a rare game, and it's honestly rare because it's not very good.
Right, exactly.
But anyway, the reason it only had one recorded high score on Twin Galaxies. So that meant that whoever played it and got the highest score at our show would instantly have the second highest score in the world.
I don't think that happened, but it was still glorious, I thought, because of that. That's what made it pretty funny.
Yeah.
No, I think my highlight that year, and I wish I got to have watched all of it, was Bit Brigade. So
Hmm.
if you've not watched Bit Brigade, they're an Athens-based band where a guy sits down and does a speed run of an entire game, and the band plays all the music live. And I can't remember off the top of my head which game they did at SFGE.
I think it was a Mega Man, one of the Mega
It
Man.
probably was. It probably was. We have seen them before at other conventions, but boy, it was once again standing room only, and an incredible, amazing. Not only for the guy playing the game, but just the music. They were great, and hopefully we can have them back one year. But that was one of those bands that you remember.
Yeah.
We also had the #1 selling pinball designer of all time that year, Mr. Steve Ritchie. And there's a lot of Steve Ritchie fanboys out there, and I am one of them. So I was really excited that we were able to score him for the show, and he ended up being a great guest. Great guests are ones that have a good time at your show, and he seemed to have a great time.
Yeah, and we had a lot of people say, "Please bring him back, please," like the next year. And we don't typically want to cycle the same guest, over and over if we can avoid it. And from what I heard, he doesn't do quite as many conventions as he used to. So, but very thankful to have him. I own one of his machines. I think he's genius when it comes to that. So yes, I
Yeah.
agree.
And another thing we really like to get, if we can, and Steve checks that box, is what we call bang for your buck guests, where they're crossover guests, right? So
Oh, yeah.
Steve also has that history with Mortal Kombat and doing the voices for that. So not only the best-selling pinball designer of all time, but also a foot in that world of a really popular video game title and voiceover. And so he checks a lot of boxes for a lot of people.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm excited because we're all the way up to 2019, right? So this is one of those. I want to go back for a second, Preston, because you said it earlier, where we always put it on the line with hopes that we'll pull through with a big change. Right?
Uh-huh.
We've always put back into the show, and we want to see the show grow, and we've done such, I think, a good job of that. And last year was a scary year because we talked to the convention center for a few years, right? I definitely had meetings with them multiple times of trying to make the decision of when do we grow. And the disadvantage, once again, for a show like ours is we're in the second largest Marriott in Atlanta. I don't think any of our fans that bring arcades and pinballs would want to go downtown to the largest Marriott in Atlanta.
No, I've unloaded a truck downtown. It is not a
And
fun experience.
You don't want to do that, no.
No.
And so, plus you pay $25 a day to park, right?
Mm-hmm.
Something like that. So we like where we're at, and we like what we do, and so we know the show needed to grow, and so we made a decision to expand into the directly connected convention center. So if you've not been to our show but you're listening to this, the hotel has a lot of convention space, and we've utilized every corner of it at one point. There's a walkway that goes directly from out of registration and by tabletop directly over to this big, I can't remember the square footage, 14,000 square. No, no, it's way bigger than that. 20.
Yeah, 60,000 square feet.
Yeah, it's a huge concrete floor. We're sorry, we're so sorry, we can't carpet it. Convention space that allowed us to expand the arcade side of things, arcade and pinball. And the only comment that we've heard throughout the years is, well, they had less arcades and pinball that year. I went this year and they have less arcades and pinball.
To address that, literally every year we get someone to complain that there were fewer pinball machines and video games than the prior year. Every year we have grown.
It's all a matter of, like, remember the beginning of this, I talked about how many, it looked like 1 million machines in that small space at Marriott.
Mm-hmm.
So it's all about perspective of what's around you. The bad part of that space, that space was wonderful to expand. It had 2 bad sides, and we knew it, and we're working to try to make those better as we move into next year. But it's loud. Why? Because it's concrete. And the floor's hard. And so we know if you're out there playing, it gets old. So we'd totally been prepared this year to give out what, Preston? We were going to give them when you walked in the door.
What? I don't remember.
Earplugs.
Earplugs.
Oh, right.
we totally pretend to give out some earplugs to everybody. We do know it's loud, but
it solved one of the major issues
it totally
we've
did.
had ever since the first year, and that is the load in and load out bottleneck. And that was especially true in the Renaissance ballroom.
With
with this freight elevator.
No, some of these people have never seen that freight elevator. Every single one of those arcade and pinball machines when we were over in the hotel actually went in how big was that, Preston? 10 by 10? No, maybe
it's bigger than that, but yeah, like a 10 by 20. But
yeah, freight elevator.
It was compact and slow and hot.
Ooh, hot. Yes.
Yeah.
And this way, with the new convention space, you can unload a truck right there on the floor.
Yep.
So I'll tell you my exciting thing for 2019 last year was, and I wasn't sure for a couple reasons it would do as well as it did. We added miniature painting. And so if you've never done this, miniature painting is actually where you take a small miniature, if you play D&D or some of those other RPG games, and you paint it to be what you want it to be. And so not only did we add it, but we put it, because of where it had to be, way far away from the tabletop area. So I really imagined that, it would be hard for everyone to do it. We charged $1. All that went to our charity. And so we're really excited to do that. And then on Saturday at 6 o'clock, the lady who runs it came to me and said, Shannon, if we don't slow down or stop early, we're not going to have any miniatures to paint tomorrow.
That's a good problem to have.
It's a good problem. I had no idea. And so really want to make sure that we thank our people who help support us for that. And that was Plaid Paints, which is an Atlanta-based company that does painting. If you've ever used their product, there's a lot of stuff out there. And the Army Painter. Both of those helped that room come together. And we plan to have it this year, unfortunately, but next year. So.
And we also brought back something we had, because of the new space in the convention center, we had room to bring back something that so many people had asked for that we had the first year, but hadn't been able to have since. And that was a flea market.
Yeah, it's so nice to have that, because it while this show is a community-based show, that kind of stuff of collectors just bringing out their extra parts and trying to make some deals, it feels like it felt before we started the show, when we were just attending the pin swap and just the community came out, and it was like the hardcore collectors. It provided a little bit of that nostalgic feeling towards that. And you can also find some great deals. So
yeah.
Did y'all go see it? Like, were you as shocked as I was as how much stuff and how many people were back there?
I was. I mean, there were two of them, just for everybody's knowledge. There was a board game flea market, and then later there was arcade and pinball parts, and both of those were covered up and packed.
Yep.
And Shannon, I was stunned by how many people were A, selling, and B, buying.
Me too, totally. The last thing for me last year that was new that I really liked is we definitely dipped our toes more into RPGs, D&D, and our room that we'd had a room ever since we moved to this hotel for D&D, but it had expanded. In fact, last year it grew into another space. I actually had the hotel open 3 extra rooms that they told us we could use for overflow on Saturday, and we put tables in all of those rooms. So tabletop and RPGs moved into all of those rooms. And so it definitely was something we saw grow. And in addition, we had a couple of different groups doing live D&D and teaching D&D. I know D4, which is a very popular, they're now part of the channel that shows the main D&D groups playing. It's recorded in Brazelton by Meeple Madness, one of our sponsors. They actually brought out a good crowd just to see them live and playing D&D live. And I thought that was something we'd never done, nothing like that before, and that was cool.
And we had we also had the silent auction was continued as it has, and we had Project Pinball as our official charity that year. And so Project Pinball ran a great silent auction, and a lot of people brought stuff to donate to the silent auction, and it was a big success. And they really raised a lot of money for that charity.
Yeah, and they were there the year prior too. Silent auction benefited them the prior year, and with a matching donation from a generous donor, the funds that they raised at our show, along with that, they were actually able to place a pinball machine in the Atlanta Ronald McDonald House.
That's right.
And that was really special to be a part of that dedication ceremony.
Yeah, we were all lucky to be there and to witness that, and to know that these families would be able to play that when they're there with their kids for procedures. It was really cool.
Yep.
Yeah.
Really cool.
So even though we don't get to have a show in person this year, it does my heart good to know that the years that we can, we're really adding something to the community, whether that's through making new memories, making new friendships, having fun, or giving back to the community in a real and tangible way. It lets me know that the show that we've put together is something special, and I hope it's become a part of the Atlanta landscape, a part of the Southeast landscape for years to come.
Yeah, I think we're all heartbroken we can't have SFGE in person, and we're not the only ones. Every single show creator is in the same boat as we are if their dates have been throughout the summer and moving into the fall. And we know we made the right decision in canceling the show. And I want to say now I appreciate the people that have supported us, both by letting their memberships carry over. We as we said before, we were on the hook for some of what we had to have for this year because we did cancel prior to the city or the state not letting us have the event. And because of you doing that, and because of the orders that we had through our merch site, we feel very confident that SFG is as strong as ever, and we'll hopefully be back next year with no glitches whatsoever, assuming COVID goes away, right?
That's right. That's right.
So we didn't get into big SFGE 2020 news. I do want to mention 2021 just briefly, only because we knew our dates long before this year for SFGE 2021. They're actually going to be June 11th through 13th. And I know someone says, oh, you're moving back to June. We've actually really enjoyed the July date, minus the heat. But July brings in the baseball all-star game to Atlanta, which had the convention center booked for 2 weeks, even though they knew they weren't using all 2 weeks, and they couldn't tell us when they really were going to be there and using the space. So rather than us and 20 million baseball fans, we decided it was best to pick a different date. And our June date, June 11th through 13th, 2021 was the date available. It's been set in stone for a couple of years. So that's when we're back next year. We're in the convention center and the hotel again. And we're excited to be back, and hopefully things will be a lot smoother, a lot cleaner because of all this COVID stuff, for sure.
Before we depart, Shannon, I was hoping that you could just give a very brief rundown of some things that people can expect for our virtual conference, our virtual SFGE that this podcast is kind of kicking off.
Yeah, definitely. Before I get into what's going to be in the show, I do want to say, I know people still want to play, and we have people that still have pins on locations, and I want to throw out a couple here just so you can go and support them. Take your hand sanitizer, wear your mask by all means. But if you feel like you want to get out and play, Replay Arcade is a newly opened arcade here at the Mall of Georgia. Portal Pinball is over in Kennesaw. My Parents' Basements is in Avondale Estates. Stars and Strikes is one of our sponsors, and they're open on a store-by-store location. Joystick Game Bar in Atlanta is trying to get things back going again. Obviously, we support them heavily. Bumper Nets in Birmingham is back open. If you've ever been in Birmingham, that is the place to play pinball. Pints and Pixels in Huntsville, they've done a couple of tournaments and giveaways for us. They're not open yet, but they're doing a remodel while they're down, and they hope to be back soon. Reboot Retrocades in Macon. Flashback Games is in Marietta. Battle and Brew, if you're into tabletop, Meeple Madness, and obviously our love for console goes to Wizards in Gainesville, Georgia, home of Preston Burt, right? Yeah, they're great. They've supported us well. And then real quick, special thanks. Always we want to thank Marco Specialties. They're doing a couple things for our event this weekend. Extension Arcade, Stars and Strikes, Futurus, which is a VR company that supported us forever, Voice of Geeks Network, and I mentioned Army Painter and Plaid Paints. So with that being said, I want to thank y'all so much, and I want to give you just a tease of what we're got planned for you this weekend for Virtual SFGE. We're going to be broadcasting these videos, the same videos, both on our YouTube channel, and most of them will also be on Facebook. They'll have premiere times. You'll start seeing those pop up as premieres this week with countdowns to those dates. Some of the things that we've got planned for you, and there's more than this, so I'm only going to give a tease. We have a huge announcement on tonight. The next thing after this is actually Atlanta's newest game studio, and I can't tell you the name. because it would give away part of the surprise. But the crew behind that's going to be with us and chatting after that in our Discord channel, which we'll post a link to along with this video. We've got American Pinball. Josh Kugler is going to be on board, and he's going to be talking about their newest game, Hot Wheels. Brian, one of our crew chiefs, did a great interview with him, and we're excited for y'all to get to see some of the work that went into that and talk about some of the other American Pinball games. We've got some RPG stuff about what's the difference between war games and skirmish games. So if you're into RPG, there's some intro stuff or playing war games with your kids. Really cool. We're going to have, supposedly waiting on the video, things going to happen. We're going to have the Arcade Fire, The Redemption of Billy Mitchell, the musical, the entire showing. I think it's about an hour and a half that you'll get to watch. So that's something that's coming up. We have a great interview with the creator of Cubert, Warren Davis, and talks about his time with that game and where it came from and his, well, I'll let you hear it. I won't tease you for anything with that. Stern has Dwight Sullivan. Dwight has the newest game. He's one of the lead developers for the newest game that has came out from Stern, which looks beautiful. It's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. As soon as I heard it, I had to go look at the artwork. I had to see what they were drawn like. Preston, did you go check it out the moment it dropped?
I did. I had to know if it was the new Nickelodeon style that they've gone through different iterations for, or the classics. And thankfully, it was the classic one. And our crew chief, Brian, he's ordered a new one, and he lives near me. So I'm going to hopefully be able to get to check it out and play it real soon.
Oh, I'm jealous. I'm going to come to Gainesville. And then let's see, we've got some board game stuff going on. We've partnered with One Board Family. They're a great group of podcasters and videocasters. You can watch their stuff online. They're going to be doing a live Railroad Inc. playthrough. And one of our favorite guests, Chad Elkins in the tabletop world, he runs 25th Century Games. He's got a lot of different games out there. He's been at our show ever since tabletop started. And I'm sure if you've walked around the tabletop, you've played something from his. He has a new game launching on Kickstarter at the end of the month called Tutankhamun. So they're going to talk to him about his new game and what it's like and what it's going to be about. And he's got one that's coming out we should get in the mail soon if you're a fan of their business. So a lot of stuff. We got some music packed in. We've got more interviews. And we definitely will have our Discord. We're going to be chatting through our Discord all weekend long. And you can also, since all these videos launch live, you can chat in line with them as they're playing. In some videos, we'll have some of the people from the video on, not all of them, but a handful of them will have some of the creators on. I know that the Game Studio launch will have some people on to chat about it. So if that's something you're interested, definitely do that. Also this weekend, we're going to be opening our room block. Just so you know, the room block will open and we'll post links for that. And we'll also post links for memberships for 2021. So I think that's everything we do today. I'm going to open it up to Patrick and Preston. Anything I missed?
Well, I'll just say that if you happen to be listening to this and it's after July 10th through 12th, 2020, all the things that Shannon teased, we're going to be, leaving in perpetuity on our YouTube channel. So that'll be a great place for you to check it out, even after the fact. But we hope you check it out during the weekend, so you kind of feel like it's a little taste of SFGE that we couldn't have in person. But really happy to have you guys be a part of this weekend and be a part of SFGE, whether we're in person or virtual.
Absolutely. Thank everyone for your great support. Hope you guys enjoy the virtual con, and I genuinely look forward to seeing everyone in June of 2021.
Maybe we can play a game in person.
Let's do it.
All right. Thanks, y'all.